Greetings, science fiction and fantasy enthusiasts. Do you read books? Do you watch films? Do you hate deodorant? Then welcome to our podcast. You're listening to No Deodorant in Outer Space with Ryan Sean O'Reilly. Now, let's get started.
And the black eagle flies over the last crumbling mountain, and the future has passed without even a last desperate fountain. I don't remember the words.
Molly Grew.
Stop laughing.
Why won't you help me? Why must you always speak in riddles? The cat. Because I be what I be. I would tell you what you want to know, if I could, Mum. But I be a cat, and no cat anywhere ever gave anyone a straight answer.
I love that one.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to another edition of No Deodorant in Outer Space. My name is Ryan Sean O'Reilly, and I will be guiding you on yet another journey as we cover the film version of the book The Last Unicorn. This one was directed by Arthur Rankin and Jules Bass. Joining me once again on this episode is my cousin Kaelin O'Reilly from Kaelin Reads.
Hello.
Kaelin, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm a little self-conscious now. leading in with my singing.
Well, we needed that.
Okay. Well, even, I kind of took liberties with the lyrics, so.
That's okay, because then we don't have to worry about paying royalties.
Okay. I did that on purpose.
Yeah, I'm glad that you improvised the lyrics. I just think that you had to have the word last a lot, and then I think it works. It works. I appreciate it. I'm glad you did.
It reminds you that you're reading a book called The Last Unicorn.
It's the last of the last unicorns.
The last. Remember that. She's the last. But is she?
We'll soon find out. So,
okay.
Like I said, we're covering The Last Unicorn in this episode, and joining me again is Kaelin O'Reilly from Kaelin Reads. She's a video blogger about her book reads, and she's also in Goodreads. You can listen to the last episode, and she talks about herself a little bit there, and she was on previous episodes with us when we covered the Twilight Zone creator Rod Serling and one of his screenwriters, Charles Beaumont. Kaelin, to start this episode, we'll go around and do our opening salvos. I'll give mine first, and then you can give yours. Does that sound good?
All right.
All right. My opening salvo to start this episode off is a folksy take on an American fantasy classic, which manages to capture the tone of the original work. Bonus includes an all-star cast of voice talent who all seem to get it. So that's my opening salvo. What about you? I see you've prepared one this time. You actually wrote one out.
I do have one. I do. I will read it for you. It is as follows. Fun and whimsical film that sticks closely to the novel, features many recognizable voices and good humor and adventure. The songs are cheesy, and the singers off-key, but the animation is great.
All right. So there's where that's where our thoughts are on this film. Let's get right into it, since we've already kind of talked about the work in chief when we discussed the book episode. The book, The Last Unicorn, I should mention, I don't think I mentioned in the last episode, it was published in 1968 by Viking Press, I believe. So the movie came out in, let me check with my notes here. The movie came out in 1982, November 19th. Starred Mia Farrow, among others. But it was directed by Arthur Rankin and Jules Bass, who are known for Rankin and Bass. So I'm going to go into their bio portion, the bio portion of the show here real quick and talk about those two. So let's do that first before we get into the movie itself. So Arthur Rankin Jr. was born July 19th, 1924, and he died January 30th, 2014. Jules Bass was born September 16th, 1935. He's still alive as of the date of this recording. Arthur Rankin Jr. was a director, producer, and writer. He's an American. He was born in New York City. He had some actors in his extended family. I believe his paternal step-grandfather was in Gone with the Wind. Does that sound right to you, Kaelin?
Yeah, I did see that. He plays like a doctor or something.
Yeah, he's got some kind of claim to fame.
Mm-hmm.
Arthur Rankin was a huge fan of the film King Kong, which I think probably helped to shape his entire life, as we'll see later. So he really appreciated fantasy and the fantastical elements or science fiction, but also the Japanese tradition, I think, was strong with him. He started his early career for the American Broadcasting Corporation, ABC, as an art director in the 1940s, when nobody knew anything about TV. He painted sets, he did graphic design. He was known to people as a perfectionist. Jules Bass, who was a director, a producer, a composer, a lyricist, and an author, was born in Philadelphia. He worked at a New York ad agency. He composed some scores for some of the films and lyrics for some of the songs in the films. He also did some solo directing work for them. One of his solo directing works was Mad Monster Party. But what I'm getting at is that Arthur Rankin and Jules Bass formed a company called Videocraft International in 1955. And they did this primarily to produce TV commercials. In 1960, they moved into animation and changed the name to Rankin and Bass. They developed an animation technique that Rankin dubbed animagic, which was described on Wikipedia as herky-jerky effects of dolls. One of the dolls in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Rudolph was 5 inches tall and Santa Claus was 9 inches tall. The dolls were typically made of wood, wire, and wool. And thousands of still photos were taken and then run at 24 frames per second. And that's how they did some of their earlier animation, their stop-motion animation.
So, yeah, I'm guessing they took a picture and then moved them a little bit and then took the next one.
Yes.
And then moved it so that it came out to, it looked like they were actually moving.
Yeah.
But it's really just shots put together, strung together, so it looked, yeah.
Yeah. Stop-motion animation, 24 frames per second. That's, I think, a pretty good rate to get, like, fluid movement, even though these dolls were considered having a herky-jerky effect. Nearly all the animation was outsourced to Japanese animation companies, hence Rankin's interest in Japanese culture. Rankin would spend some time over there, and I think I saw some interviews where he reflected traveling a lot, to do the work. He was very passionate, and he was considered a perfectionist. Arthur Rankin primarily created the scripts, and he'd also sketched character concepts, which were developed into wooden puppets by Japanese artists. They didn't just limit themselves to stop-motion animation. They also did, two-dimensional animation, and they also did some feature films. They were most famous for their holiday TV specials, sometimes based around songs, like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, The Little Drummer Boy, Frosty the Snowman, etc. They did a lot of these. Right. And they also did, like, sequels to them and stuff. They were the first to use famous actors for the voices. And they tried to find those actors who had distinct voices, like Burl Ives.
Mickey Rooney.
Mm-hmm. Who?
Remember? Mm-hmm.
There was another... There were some other ones that were really... they used very, very famous people. Fred Astaire was in one of them.
Yes, he was.
Who's the guy? He's got like a really nasally voice.
Not sure. I feel like there was a Jackie or something.
The voice of Frosty the Snowman. Oh. I feel like it's really... I have to look it up right now. Let me see if I can...
I think there was... Keenan Wynn was also, I think, a famous voice he used a couple of times. I'm not sure if he was the wizard. He was like a warlock or something in one of the Christmas... Santa Claus is Coming to Town.
Jimmy Durante. Jimmy Durante was a narrator in Frosty the Snowman.
Okay.
They sort of innovated using famous people to do these, but they sort of picked people that like had distinct voices. Disney later really got into this, and so did Pixar and all the other companies. They had some animation shows, like I said, two-dimensional animation shows. Their most famous was probably Thundercats, and they had some other lesser famous shows. One was Silverhawks, and another one was called Tiger Sharks. They also did a King Kong show, and they did a version of the Jackson 5, which was co-produced with Motown Productions, and they did the Osmonds. And I think they also did a version of The Wizard of Oz in a bunch of shorts.
Yeah, Tales of the Wizard of Oz.
Yes, that's correct. In feature animations, They did as you said in the last episode, they did a 1977 version of The Hobbit, which gave them a Peabody Award. And they also did The Return of the King, although Arthur Rankin, I heard him comment that he was not very proud of that. He did not feel like that was very successful. There was just too much material to cover, I think he felt. And of course, they did The Last Unicorn, and they also did Peter Dickinson's The Flight of Dragons. And The Last Unicorn and The Flight of Dragons, I believe, were theatrical releases. The Flight of Dragons, I think, it's like it's almost like a history book or like a grimoire, or I don't think it's like an actual like novel. I think it's more like a history of dragons.
Oh.
I'm not familiar with it.
I've actually seen it, but it was years ago, and I don't remember it very well, but I knew that there was a book as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I didn't know if it was, you could say a history.
At least I got the impression that the book was more like a fake history of dragons or something like that. Like trying to explain how a dragon would exist and things like that. But I never read it. The production company shut down technically in 1987, although in 1999 they did a version of The King and I, which some American film critics criticized for having offensive ethnic stereotyping. Their last special was a version of Santa Baby, which came out in 2001, and that one actually made use of African-American character voice performers. Their partnership was eventually dissolved, and most of the assets were acquired by Warner Brothers, although I believe a lot of their films are owned by different companies. Okay. I came across some interviews with a gentleman named Rick Goldschmidt, who's actually out of Oaklawn, Illinois, and I used to work near there. It's not far from me.
That's where my mom is from.
Oh, okay, interesting.
That's my mom's hometown.
Yeah,
so.
He's very passionate about Rankin and Bass, and he has collected any kind of like materials. I think the puppets, if he can find them, I think it's hard to find them. I think they kind of fell apart after the productions. He almost has like a home museum of the material, and he's written several books about them. He created a website. They might sell some materials on there. I think it's called Miser Brothers. I'll try to maybe put a link on our show notes. But he's really into the history of that company, and he worked with Arthur Rankin to do that, to come up with the history of it. I think he's done also interviews on the news and stuff. So he's trying to keep the flame alive for that company, which was really a unique and very successful company that came out with a lot of product.
Yeah. Yeah,
an amazing amount.
For sure. I mean, who hasn't seen those Christmas holiday movies when you were a kid, and even growing up? And I still like watching them. You know, they're classics, and they did so many of them. Like most of, if you think of animated films from that time, you know, and growing up, chances are that these two guys had something to do with them. But I mean, they're most famously known for those. I mean, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
The holiday stuff, yeah.
Frosty the Snowman, The Year Without a Santa Claus.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are, classics.
Definitely. I mean, I remember buying like a DVD compilation for like an ex-girlfriend some years ago. Just because I remembered those. And like, they're just fun stories that you can kind of always watch. You're definitely right about that.
Family friendly. They were on every year, I think, on like ABC.
Yeah.
Or something. They would always play those on TV during Christmas time. So those were kind of a holiday tradition. I'm sure they still are, and they probably still play them.
Yeah.
I'm guessing. But with YouTube and everything, I think you can easily find them. They're probably all over YouTube as well. So just very kind of iconic holiday films.
Huge.
And obviously they did more than the holiday films, but those are, I think, the most. That's what they're going to be recognized for the most. I
mean, I remember, like, didn't they have the Abominable Snowman or something like that? I remember, like, getting, like, you could get, like, ornaments of them and stuff, like,
using just one of those.
Classic stuff. Arthur Rankin met his wife, Olga Karalatos, if I got that name right, after casting her in a TV adaptation of The Picture of Dorian Gray. I think that was not an animation. I think that was, like, just a feature film. They eventually settled in Bermuda, because Arthur Rankin seemed to really like his privacy. When he lived in Bermuda, he would produce stage shows and give lectures on film at the Bermuda College. He did some philanthropy work. He was integral to bringing the Masterworks Museum to reality. He died at the age of 89. And a quote in his obituary from someone was, they said that he was born at the time of silent film and he finished his life at the time of 3D film. So, I mean, he had a very full life. He was doing, when he was first coming in the industry, there was silent film, and then when he died, there was like 3D animation. I mean, it's huge,
Yeah, so
huge.
he got to see, like, everything.
Yeah, huge innovation. And Jules Bass kind of stopped directing and producing films around 1987, but since that time he did a series of children's books about a vegetarian dragon, Herb, the vegetarian dragon. So he also kind of kept active in his own way.
All right. I haven't heard of that one before, but...
I haven't either, but it sounded like, from the research I saw, that it was popular. And
I would think, yeah, it sounds like something to check out, especially having that name behind it. Probably something pretty unique and fun.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It seemed like I found less about Jules Bass than I did for Arthur Rankin. I found a series of interviews that Arthur Rankin did over at I think it's the Museum of TV and Radio. I'll try to put a link to those on the website, but I found those very enlightening, and I think that historian was in attendance, and even some of the, at least one of the Japanese animators who worked for them was in charge of that stuff, was present in the audience. So that was very interesting to listen to all that, kind of the stories and stuff told, and hear the audience ask questions of them. It was cool to check out. I mean, that's pretty much a quick overview of those guys in that studio, which is an iconic studio. I don't know if there's anything else that you have to add to that.
Not really. I mean, that's basically it, I think, for those two.
Okay. Rankin and Bass did a version of The Last Unicorn, which, like I said, came out in 1982, starred Mia Farrow. I'll start off the movie portion of the show here by talking about, like, what's the difference between the cartoon and the book. Now, this is a unique situation, and it's kind of like similar to, we covered Hellraiser on this podcast, and Clive Barker directed and wrote the movie Hellraiser and wrote the book. So that's a pretty unique situation. And this is also a unique situation because Peter S. Beagle wrote the screenplay for the film. He didn't direct it, but he did write the screenplay. I think I saw an interview, or not an interview, but I saw in writings that when he found out that they sold it to Rankin and Bass, I think he was upset at first. I don't know if I knew why, but he was not into it. But eventually he came around to the idea that they were going to do the animation film. The differences between the book and the film, the animation, in the Midnight Carnival, in the book there was a spider based on an arachne who would spin these webs and stuff. That was cut out of the animation. I think the spider was kind of unique in the book because the spider was sort of mesmerized by Mami Fortuna's spells. There was also hunched old Eli, who I believe that was Mami Fortuna, wasn't it? Who kind of represented old age.
Hunched Eli. I honestly don't remember that.
I thought that in the book, Mami Fortuna was like sort of the final attraction of the Midnight Carnival, and I don't know that.
Oh yes.
I don't think that happened in the film.
Yeah, she scares the unicorn. I think pretty bad with that one. Yeah, she represents death. And that was
old age.
No, that wasn't they kept that out of the movie. Yeah.
They also didn't mention that Schmedrick was sort of an immortal person. Like I think he's supposed to look young, but he's essentially immortal. That's not brought into the film at all.
Nope,
that element.
It is not. Mm-mm.
Another incident was I talked about that mayor on the highway that they visit. It's this town that's paying tribute to the bandits. I think that whole scene is cut out. They just go right to the bandits. I think after Mami Fortuna's Midnight Carnival, and the whole subplot with Hag's Gate, that's cut out.
Yeah, and the curse. I don't think they mentioned the curse in the movie.
Yeah, they kind of cut right to Haggard's castle. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they get into the curse, but it's interesting because Hag's Gate was sort of important because at some point there's a reckoning for Hag's Gate in the book, right? Where they've had this very prosperous existence because of the curse. Everywhere else in the land in Haggard's kingdom is cursed, but Hag's Gate is actually blessed. Prince Lear is from Hag's Gate, and Haggard found him there, and there's this kind of like weird dynamic between that town and the castle. The townspeople, I think, sort of plead for help at some point, and I think there's a moment in the story where it's like, well, no, you're not going to get any help. You're going to get what you deserve because when this curse happened, and the unicorns were trapped, you didn't really do anything about it, so you're going to have to take what you get. I kind of remember that element from the book.
Yeah.
And that's not in the film.
Right. Yeah, they kind of It's kind of abbreviated in there.
I think that, well, they eliminated it completely, right? They made it mention that Prince Lear is, not Haggard's biological son, but the whole subplot is taken out.
In that sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is.
They also take out the princess at the end, which you talked about. That's now that you were mentioning that in the last episode, if that was really necessary. And obviously, I guess Peter Beagle thought it was fine to take it out because he did in the screenplay.
Yeah, it just kind of implies that the prince will, go his own way and become king, and the unicorn goes her own way, and it's Bendrick and Molly. But yeah, there isn't that little ending extra. And I'm not sure why. Maybe they just thought it wouldn't have.
It was unnecessary.
Wasn't because they would have had more. Yeah.
Did you? You said in the last episode that you thought maybe it didn't even need to be in the book. So I mean, in the film, it's not there. Did you think that it was better to have it cut out?
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. Like I kind of just thought it seemed cheesy at the time to have a princess come. It just seemed like
superfluous,
a cop out to a fairy tale. It becomes like the fairy tale where he's got to have the wife, and she's going to be his princess. But at the same time, it's like they wanted to stick with fairy tales while at the same time kind of making a new kind of fairy tale. So I don't know. It didn't seem necessary to me, and maybe they left it out because maybe he had a change of heart, but I don't know.
They might have just left it out for timing.
Right, because they would have had to explain, because Smudrick gave him that whole speech, how, there's going to be a woman who comes around in distress or whatever, and she's going to find you and, be your princess in so many words. So they would have had to have him probably explain that. Otherwise, her showing up would have been off. It wouldn't have made sense, because, he's all about Lady Amalthea at that point, and so
do you think his affection for Lady Amalthea is cheapened in the book by the fact that when a new princess comes along, it's implied that he will then fall in love with her? Maybe
that was it.
Yeah, I can see that point.
Yeah,
by including that, you sort of cheapen the bittersweet aspect of the book where he loses his love.
Mm-hmm. A good way to put it, yes. And I couldn't put it just that way, but yeah, now that you say that, I think that's probably it. Like, because they build up this whole relationship between Lear and Lady Amalthea, like basically throughout most of the film, and then just to have it kind of, it's almost like I keep thinking it's a cop out, like it's just like, poor Lear, he's sad. Let's bring him a lady, just some random, and because she's a woman, she'll just become a princess, and even though he knows nothing about her.
Yeah,
but
I see your point. I think the book wasn't necessarily made better by including that element, and that becomes apparent in watching the film. The film doesn't really lose anything by not having it.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I agree with you. Even though I gave the book 5 stars, you could probably cut that scene.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Other than that, it's a pretty faithful rendition of the book. I mean, the author did it himself.
Right.
In this podcast, we see directors who are very faithful to the underlying work, and then we see ones that take risks and go different ways. And, more often than not, people say the book is better than the movie. But there's been a couple times in this podcast where I felt, no, the movie's better than the book. And usually I felt that that's the case when the director decided to take a risk and just go their own way and not be super faithful. But in this case, you have the writer writing the screenplay. The directors still have their control. They could have done things differently, but they kept faithful. Do you think that, I guess I feel that the tone of the book was captured in this film.
Mm-hmm.
Agree?
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very whimsical, and it's obviously a fairy tale, and you have all the elements of the book, like most of the characters, a lot of the same lines I talked about in the last episode, a lot of the same dialogue is included, and a lot of the humor is kept, the same sense of humor.
Yeah.
A lot of the lines it was fun to read the book because I had mentioned I had seen the movie long before. And I've seen it multiple times, the film, but just reading it, and like I kind of was reading it along with him, like remembering the words. So I was like jumping ahead of him when he was when I was reading his words, because I remembered what they were. And I was like, oh, I remember that line, and I'm glad he took that out of the book and kept it for the movie, you know?
This is a star-studded cast, like we said. Mia Farrow plays the unicorn. You got Alan Arkin playing Schmedrick. Jeff Bridges. Mm-hmm. Jeff Bridges, who's Tron, I believe, right? He's playing Prince Lear.
Yep. Christopher Lee
playing King Haggard.
King Haggard, who's been in tons of stuff.
Oh, Lord of the Rings and just like everything.
Got a great voice too. Yeah, he was Saruman. Is it Saruman?
Yes. Saruman.
The villain, the bad guy.
He was also in The Devil Rides Out, which we covered in this podcast. He acted in that.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's been in. I think he's got some kind of world record though. I think goodness, if I'm not mistaken, of being in just the amount of films that he's been in as an actor. Just the sheer number of movies that he has been in.
I believe
Something it. Like been in the most movies than any other actor. And didn't he die like just a couple of years ago?
Yeah, pretty recently. Recently.
I think he made it into his 90s, so he's been around like forever. So he had a lot of roles, and a lot of them were kind of in the more of the fantastical, kind of scary horror, fantasy type of movies. Because if you look at, I remember looking at this a while back, and I think a lot of them were weird titles like that, like a lot of different weird roles.
Oh yeah.
But who else? Angela Lansbury is the voice of I think Mommy Fortuna,
and I think she had another role too. I forget who else. I think she might have done something else too.
Oh, but yeah, some of the characters, do multiple, or some of the actors, I think, do a few different roles.
Robert Klein is in this. I forget. Does he play the Skull? No,
I don't know.
I forget who he is. But interesting note about Christopher Lee, I saw something on the internet about how when he came to do the voice reading for this, Peter S. Beagle showed up, and he told Peter S. Beagle to listen to his recording, and if Peter S. Beagle didn't like it, he would do it, like he would redo it. He really wanted to get it right. And he also supposedly showed up with a bunch of things in the book highlighted, where he was insisted to the directors, like, this has to stay in the way it's written. You can't change these things. Like, that's the passion that Christopher Lee has for the source material.
He must have loved the book and he wanted to keep, like, true to it. So.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And apparently I think Peter Beagle was pretty pleased with his, performance and his voice, along with
I think
pretty much all the other ones. I think he was pretty happy with. So, but it's funny to just listen and you can recognize the voices. I mean, Jeff Bridges kind of has a distinctive voice, but Alan Arkin definitely does. Yeah,
Schmedrick. Yeah.
It's Schmedrick, my favorite. But yeah, I thought that was a great pick for Schmendrick's voice, though, because I think when I was reading the book, I was hearing his dialogue in like Alan Arkin's voice, so like, he fits pretty well, I think.
Who was Molly Grew? Because I feel like that was a good casting too.
She was good, but I don't think she was famous, as she wasn't as well known. I forget her name.
Yeah, maybe. Let me see.
It's Tammy something.
Tammy Grimes.
Tammy Grimes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't recognize that name.
What else you've done?
Oh, Robert Klein was the butterfly.
Okay.
And Angela Lansbury was Mommy Fortuna. Was she someone else? No, maybe not. Paul Frees was Brooke. Brother Theodore was Rook, the hunchback. Don Messick was the cat. Yeah.
Actually, Brother Theodore, have you ever seen The Burbs? Because he's one of the neighbors, the creepy neighbors. He's like the brother of the doctor, and he talks in it. You can hear his voice, and you can really hear like, oh, that's Rook. He's got the same.
I think, isn't Brother Theodore the guy who plays the voice of Gollum in the Hobbit cartoon?
According to Wikipedia, yes.
Yes, I recognize that voice.
Okay,
the voice of Rook.
The voice of Gollum.
Yes, in the 1977 version. And in The Return of the King by Rankin Bass. Yep. Yeah, very distinct voice. Very good. It's a great casting. The voices are all good. The people seem to get it, as I said. The musical score included a score, but it also included folksy musical songs by the band America, who have their famous song.
Horse with No Name is one of them.
Horse with No Name. That's the one I'm thinking of. I have like their best of album.
Ventura Highway.
Yeah. I like the band America. It sort of puts this film in a certain time period by having this folksy music come in along with the musical score. Maybe because I like the band America. I didn't feel it was too dated. I don't know how you felt when you rewatched it.
I like the band America fairly. You know, I think they have some good songs.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the songs in the movie are, I think I like the one when Prince Lear is singing. When he's saying, like, Anyway, I Love You, when he's trying to write the poems. I like that song because I thought it was kind of touching and it fit. But some of the songs are just kind of made me roll my eyes, honestly, because they're just kind of
too on the nose.
They were a little bit, and some of the voices they got to sing them. And I should talk because I started this podcast singing, and that was not for serious. Okay, I'm just goofing around, but yeah, I thought some of them were off key and just singing about being a woman and stuff. And it was just kind of like, I don't know. I didn't take the songs that seriously, honestly.
Okay. Did you feel like it dated it?
By making it making it more modern?
Well,
because of the modern band?
Well, because it was by the band America and because of the content of the songs, did you feel like, oh, I'm watching an old movie? Or did you feel like this is immortal? Like, I could watch...
It felt like an 80s movie, honestly.
Okay.
It did feel, I did feel in that kind of style, that kind of 80s song.
Mm-hmm. What about the... Go ahead.
No, I don't know if... They fit in that the lyrics are fitting for the story and everything. I just don't look... The execution of it was iffy for me, like the song...
Yeah.
Some of them I like. I like the Last Unicorn song, like the opening song I like. I kind of like Walking Man's Road, and I said I like the poetry when he's trying to write the poetry. But when the Lady Amalthea sings, it just kind of... I could have done without her singing at that point. Because, I think she had it was off-key. And it was cheesy. I don't know how else to describe it. It was cheesy, and it kind of threw me off. So that's the biggest gripe I think I had with it.
I think I agree with you. It lacked sort of a bombastic, immortal quality like maybe a Disney animation would have, because the songs maybe were a little too folksy. I can totally, like you just said, see why they chose to go this way, because it's about a unicorn and forest and fantasy, and why not go this route with America and doing these like sort of folksy songs. But I can see what you're saying, how it kind of comes off cheesy at times, and now all these years later, does it hold up? Maybe not. Not, they weren't annoying to me, but maybe they weren't memorable. But like I don't know, if you watch like The Little Mermaid or something like that, and you watch the song 20 years later, you could probably still get into it.
Right. No, it's not a Disney film, but yeah, you kind of want to go. And I've seen the film multiple times, so I remember the songs. But if you were just to watch it once, most of those songs would be, there wouldn't be like a big hook to, make you remember them.
Well, you're not.
And I want to.
You're not wanting to keep singing them.
Some of them. Right. There's no like catchy number, Yeah. They're all kind of laid back and kind of soft. But and like I said, I like some of them. I like Walking Man's Road, and I like the opening song. But the song by her,
Which of those songs do you sing to your dog?
To my dog, probably the Last Unicorn.
What's your dog's name?
The theme song, the opening song, Vincent.
And what is Vincent's response when you sing those songs?
He pretty much ignores me.
That's the problem. Yeah. And there's the problem.
He yawns. Maybe I'm not executing the songs right.
I don't know. Is it you or is it the song? That's the question.
I don't know. I try something popular, like something from like Justin Bieber or something.
See if Vincent responds more to that.
Something more to our time. But yeah, so the music basically wasn't its strongest point.
It's like serviceable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not bad, not great.
Yeah.
Kind of just there.
The animation style. How did you feel about that? Like, I listened to some other podcasts talking about reviewing this cartoon, and I've heard some people criticize it and stuff. I mean, the animations, if you watched The Hobbit, the Rankin Bass version of The Hobbit, or The Return of the King, I mean, that's what you're getting. It's sort of a unique 2D animation style. I liked it. I thought the characters are very interestingly drawn and sort of elaborate.
Yeah.
It's not what you're going to get now, because they didn't have that technology back then, but it's got a distinct style. I liked it.
Yeah, I liked it too. It worked for me. I like the way they draw the unicorn and how, they don't want to make her look like a horse.
Yeah, they do a good job of that.
She's more like a kind of a deer, like a deer's body, and they're supposed to have like cloven hooves, I think. Mm-hmm. And the stuff, they didn't make all the characters look the same. And I'm a little bit old-fashioned. I grew up in the 80s, as you know, and so I like the older style of animation, like back when they did like The Lion King and The Little Mermaid, and there wasn't all of these elaborate effects and computer-generated stuff. And that has its place, of course, and it's pretty amazing. But I also like, I don't know how many kind of effects they could have back then, but it seemed a lot more, just
soulful,
raw, and not soulful. I don't know where you're getting that, but
well, like what do you think of the rendition of Mommy Fortuna? She's got like a tree branch on her head. She's really creepy looking. I mean,
yeah, and she's short and squat, and then they have Schmendrick, who's tall and kind of gangly, and like the faces were pretty detailed, I thought.
Yeah,
and it seemed to have its own unique style, which I liked. I mean, just like the Disney and the Pixar films today are good, but there's no limits. Like, they can do anything, but it seems like they just seem like more hand-drawn, like.
And I'm sure they were, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know how much today's films, I'm sure they start by being, drawn films, but it seems like you can tell it more, that it's more like, not authentic, but just less doctored up, less doctored up by computers, basically. Mm-hmm. And I appreciated that.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not right, because I don't know a lot about animation and things like that, but it just seems like it's like that.
Well, I like the style. I mean, I grew up watching the Hobbit animation and wishing there would be a live-action version. Eventually, there was, when Peter Jackson did it. But until then, that's all we had was these cartoons. So seeing The Last Unicorn in the same style, it was familiar to me and just felt like coming home to it. Like, I liked it. It looked very like similar to The Hobbit in the renditions, and I liked those versions, those drawings. They were creepy when they needed to be creepy. They were elaborate when they needed to be elaborate, and they had detail. I guess that's what I mean when I say they're soulful. Like, I felt like it wasn't so generic. These, I think they're probably Japanese artists who did this. I felt like they had a particular style.
Yeah, I like how you say that they weren't generic, because I think that's kind of what I was trying to get at, but couldn't find the words for. But it wasn't didn't just look like a regular old like cartoon show or something. But the characters, they had distinctive look to them and everything, and also just with the unicorn's movements, and just like when it shows the like galloping and everything, it looks real. Like it's it has the legs moving the way they should be. Growing up with horses, you notice that kind of thing on like animation for horses. Like, how are they making them move? And it looked real. It looked like like a real animal, the way that they move. So they paid attention to that kind of stuff. And it's not like unicorns exist, but they moved like, I know we shouldn't be comparing them to horses, because in the book, they're distinct from horses, but they move like that. If there's an animal you can compare them to that way, it would be horses. So I noticed that. It wasn't just like choppy, they didn't make it like were fake animals, which I guess, they are, but, I'm starting to just they're not generic.
And, I also felt like the landscapes were sort of magical and were effective in drawing you into the story. Like King Haggard's castle, I thought was like how you'd picture it, and it was unique, and I just felt drawn in overall to everything. I mean, I guess it's not a surprise, because I grew up watching the Hobbit animation, and so this was like that, and I liked the Hobbit animation, so I probably wasn't gonna dislike this. It was done with the same care, the same effort, the same, skill.
Familiar.
Yeah,
familiar territory for you, but in a good way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of take you back.
Although you said you didn't like the version of the cat who had like a peg leg.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember it being that strange looking. Like, did it have a peg leg in the book, and why add that? It was supposed to be a regular cat, right? Wasn't it just supposed to be like your average house cat, whatever?
I think so.
Or stray cat. But yeah, it was like, why does it have a peg leg? That was wasn't a huge, point of.
There was no character who was very generic in this. All the characters were sort of kind of unique and distinct.
Yeah, they gave each character kind of their own. You couldn't mistake one character for the other. That's for sure.
Yeah. What about? I heard a podcast reviewing this film, and they talk about the tree scene, which is in the book.
Yeah,
Schmendrick is trying to make
in the tree.
He's trying to make an illusion. He makes an illusion. Robin Hood shows up, but then he has this weird scene where he falls in love with this tree. He's tied to this tree, and the tree falls in love with him.
The tree falls in love with him. Yes.
But in the end, in the animation, the tree is like overboard in love with him, and it's like this voluptuous tree, like smothering him with its breasts. It's like this crazy kind of scene for like a kid's book. Like, this podcast made a big to-do about it, and I was like, that's true. Like, it's sort of a crazy scene for a kid's animation.
Yeah, I mean, they were trying to show how his magic doesn't always work the way that he'd like it to, but yeah, it was a bit over the top. I think it was sort of a comic scene, maybe to bring the mood, make the mood lighter a little bit.
Yeah.
But the tree is all kind of poetic and
anatomically correct.
Yeah, it's a female tree, and she's obviously completely in love with Schmendrick, and it's kind of just crazy absurd.
Yeah,
because it's a tree, and I don't know if there was more to it. Is there supposed to be more to it than that, or just basically to show that his magic, he screwed up?
Yeah, I think it's just a sign of the times that they would go to that. I don't think if they did that animation today that they would do it that way. It's pretty baudy.
Yeah, it was, and I noticed that. I didn't really remember that from watching it years earlier. But, yeah,
it's a sign of the times.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned how is this a kids movie or an adult movie? Because there are a few places where it's a little bit questionable. Like, some pretty dark moments. Yeah, and then there's kind of adulty moment there. And I don't know if kids would notice that, but. You want to talk about the harpy in the film? Yeah, I mean, it was just the fact, just the Mommy Fortuna, she's done in by the harpy. It's kind of, I think the kid would be afraid of that, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't speak because I didn't see the film until I was an adult, but I don't know.
But I did watch. I remember watching, like, Watership Down as a kid and, like, the Rats of Nim. Those were scary cartoons, and I remembered them as being good, and they hold up later now. Like, I think this cartoon has elements of that are kind of scary and push boundaries, but I think it works, and it's not done in bad taste. Yeah. That harpy is a scary thing.
Kids are resilient, too. I don't think they, and surprising, like, things that because I watched Labyrinth when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And that has a lot of kind of creepy characters in it and some dark things going on. But that's a movie I remember growing up with, and it became one of my favorites. So, I mean, I guess compared to some of those films, The Last Unicorn wouldn't even hold up. Like, it's really not that bad as far as, I don't want my child to see this or anything like that,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's got the comedy and it's got the unicorns. Kids are gonna like that and the magic and everything. It's kind of it's hard to say like who is this movie and maybe the book would be targeted more towards. Is it people of all ages? Is it a timeless story? Is it targeted for young adults? It's kind of hard to say, but it's maybe for anyone because it's kind of timeless in their fairy tale. It's got elements of fairy tale, but then it brings it a new kind of twist and makes its own fairy tale. And you could say fairy tales are for kids, But then if you take like The Wizard of Oz, that's really for people of all ages. And so, I mean, this movie doesn't have the fame and following that Wizard of Oz does, but with taking magic and fairy tales and things like that, they tend to be like themes that people of any age can really enjoy. But I digress, I think.
Well, I mean, I think that's all I have to say about the film. I think we can go into our star ratings and final comments.
Okay, sure.
I'll start us off. I'm going to give this film 3.5 stars. And sort of playing off of what you're saying, I think this is a film that can be seen by anyone. I think the music is enjoyable, but it is somewhat dated. I don't think this is quite an all-time classic like the book is.
No.
Or like some classic Disney films are. I think it aspires to that, and I think it could be enjoyed by anyone of any age. But I think it's a little bit more dated than other animations of its ilk. And I can see where younger kids might not get as much out of it. I mean, some might. It definitely has substance, and the effort is there, and it's definitely something that can be appreciated for years to come. But it just... it doesn't quite get over the hump of being like an instant classic.
No.
So,
it doesn't.
Yeah, that's what I'll say about it.
Okay.
What about you? How many stars do you give it?
I gave it 3 out of 5. I think the book was better. I tend to like books better than films. I mean, just the amount
controversial.
of detail and the writing. Yes. There were parts. I liked the movie characters, how he did the characters. I thought they were well matched to the book characters. Schmendrick, of course, I had mentioned before that he's my favorite character. I love Schmendrick. I think that Alan Arkin does a great job with his voice. I think all the voice characters are great and fitting.
Yeah.
It
it's a
moves
good
along
cast.
pretty well. It does. I think it does. The movie does drag a little bit towards the middle when they're kind of working in the castle and kind of time is passing and there's like a montage, I think, with the time going by and Molly's working in the scullery and cooking food and Schmendrick is trying to do magic and Amalthea's out somewhere, being sullen and things like that.
You texted me at some point. You're like, "Am I supposed to hate the Lady Amalthea?" Didn't you text me that?
I did.
What was that text about?
I didn't like how she was treating Prince Lear.
Oh.
And I mean, yeah, I thought she was mean.
She is cold.
And it was unwarranted.
She is distant.
She is very cold. She's very cold. And
doesn't that make the story special, more like unique?
Probably.
But
yes.
But was it too much?
I have no justification for this. I just thought, why are you being what? Because everyone's trying to help you, and Schmendrick and Molly are there, because of you, and they're trying to find out something important for you and find your family and your unicorn relatives, but you're just, forgetting that and complaining and whining, not really whining, but just basically avoiding people. While Schmendrick and Molly are working hard, she's not doing anything.
True. I mean, and so, Molly says what you're saying. Molly's like, I wish you would be nicer to the prince.
Yeah, and I concur. I say go Molly because she's right. Yeah. Okay, so my true thoughts of Lady Amalthea come out. And she's similar in the book, but I thought she was a little nicer in the movie. Like, I felt like she at least had some manners, because she would be like, good day, sir, or forgive me. And she didn't really talk. I think they added that a few little touches here and there to make her a little bit more likable, a little more like polite. Yeah, I mean, I think maybe it's hard to remember exactly the Lady Amalthea in the book and the one in the movie and which one am I thinking of, but I feel like reading the book, I felt she was a bit more cold. And then in the movie, they kind of, like I said, they added a few things here and there to make her a little bit warmer, but without being that warm overall. So, yeah, I preferred her as a unicorn, but even as a unicorn, she wasn't
warm.
She's better, right? I did like her, but then when she's a unicorn, I liked her better in the book.
Mm.
So I don't know how I can explain that, but
I get you.
I remember. Do you remember in the movie where she meets the butterfly, and he says something to her? I don't remember the first thing he says to her, but she says, like, be a little respectful. Do you know who I am? And I'm, like, thinking of her saying, like, don't you know who I am? You know, it's like, she's got, like, she has this huge unicorn ego, and
yeah, you're right.
Like, she probably should, because, you know, she is a unicorn, but I'm like...
She's the last unicorn.
I didn't want her to say it. I didn't want to hear her say it.
Yeah.
I wanted her to be humble, a humble unicorn.
She's not really humble.
No, she's not.
Yeah. She's likable enough in the end, but, I mean, because you understand her plight is serious. I mean, if she's the last unicorn, humble or not, that's like, we're talking extinction level here. Mm-hmm. But
that's true.
But she's not, like, just like a humble, easily likable protagonist.
Right.
Yeah.
I prefer her as a unicorn, though, I have to say.
Huh. So 3 stars.
Well, yes.
For the movie.
Yeah. And that would be kind of like a solid, good, but not, it wasn't anything that would be extraordinarily remarkable. I'll remember lines from it, and I'll remember the songs, but I think that the book surpasses it, so.
Yeah. Do you want to sing any of the other songs right now?
I do not. I think you should, though. You're the host.
If I did, I would just keep repeating the word last over and over again.
Last, because you have to remember that she's the last.
She is the last unicorn.
Don't forget it.
Yes.
But as it turns out, she is not really the last.
Yeah, true. Yeah, she didn't have to be so uppity about it.
It seems that way. Right?
Yeah, they're around. They're just kind of like hiding out in the ocean, afraid of the Red Bull. Oh, I was gonna drink a Red Bull during this podcast. I guess I forgot to.
I hate Red Bull. Yeah, and I was thinking of the drink too. I'm like, people who are reading this now, as opposed to, in the late 60s, 70s, they're gonna have a whole different like connotation or like, connection with that. And like Red Bull, the drink, and then they're probably going to be like a suggestion. They're going to go and get a Red Bull and read the book while drinking Red Bull.
Yeah, I mean, every time I saw the reference to a Red Bull, I was like, oh, I wonder if the drink was based on this book. But
Red Bull. Oh yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
It could be.
Yeah, research that.
I don't want to bash Lady of Malthea, because overall, I like the book. I appreciate it. I think it was strong writing. I think it's better in book form than in the movie, just because of the amount of details that are covered. And his writing style is just very, like I said, lyrical, but without being heavy-handed. It kind of transports you. It transports you to that world, and it builds it for you, and like the characters are developed more. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate the dialogue. He's got some witty dialogue in there, especially from Svendrik, I think, and from Molly Grew. And those are some of the really strong points. Yeah. And it kept my interest. The pacing was perfect, I thought. There weren't, like, points where it dragged down, as opposed to, like, the movie kind of dragged a little bit. But this is kind of a quick read, and it didn't have to be any more or less than it was. As far as length and detail.
The film's, I think, only 82 minutes. It's not that long of a film, but I mean, I understand your point.
Of a film.
Or 84 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, but I like, some of the funny parts I appreciate where, when he's trying to save the unicorn with the key, with his magic, and then after, like, 3 attempts, he's like, you'll have to be glad, or he's like, you deserve the services of a first-rate magician, but you'll have to settle for the services of a second-rate pickpocket or something. I don't remember his exact words, and he pulls out the key that he's had the whole time. Yeah. Because he really, really wanted to, use his magic and impress her with his magic. And
well, that's where I think, I mean, the film captures the soul of the story for the most part. You know, I mean, it's there. Mm-hmm. The words are there. The lyrics, the lines, I mean, maybe the songs are a little dated because of the style, but
The butter. Yeah.
for the most
I
part.
like the butterfly part, too. I like that he left the butterfly's words in there for the most part, too.
Yeah.
So,
Listen to me.
Funny.
Listen to me.
Interesting. Yeah, don't listen to me. Listen. Those are the things I remember, like, most about the butterfly and the Schmendrick line and things. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I like
All right. Well, that will conclude things for us here. If people want to check out more about you, they can listen to our previous episode about Charles Beaumont and Rod Serling when we talk about Twilight Zone and Beaumont stories. Or they can check out your video blog on YouTube, Kaelin Reads. You're also on Instagram and Goodreads, where you do book reviews. The podcasts can be followed at nodeodorant.com. We're also on Apple Podcasts. We're on TuneIn Radio. We're on Stitcher. We're on YouTube. We're on Google Play. Pretty much most places you can find podcasts, you can find this podcast. And we'd invite you to write reviews and subscribe to the podcast. We appreciate that. We appreciate getting any kind of feedback about what we do here. So, that will... Go ahead.
Yeah, my Goodreads is actually Kaelin O, so it's Kaelin space O, but my booktube, or excuse me, my YouTube is Kaelin Reads, so, yeah.
All right, that works. People can find you there. And with that, we'll say good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night, everyone. We'll talk to you next time. All right? Bye.
For more information on the topics discussed in this episode, or to read our show notes and find us on social media, visit nodeodorant.com. For more information on Ryan Sean O'Reilly and his various works of fiction, visit ryanseanoreilly.com. The theme music for this podcast was written by John Doyle from the band I Decline. You can visit him at i-decline.com. Voiceover for this podcast was provided by me, Margaret O'Reilly. Well, that concludes our episode. We hope you've learned a lot. Again, thanks for listening to our show. And always, always remember, there is no deodorant in outer space.
Okay, hit record. Test. All right. And let me hear you.
Hello. Test.
Okay, we got a little airplane in the background. Could probably turn that down. We don't need that. So. Can I get you to sing the first lines of that song?
No.
When the last eagle... Come on. When the last eagle flies over the last rumbling mountain, the last.
Is this going to be funny or a serious song?
Well, however you do it.